Math and God are not two separate subjects. In fact, a biblical worldview of mathematics will enhance our relationship with God. Math reveals the nature and character of God. Through math, God helps us understand his heart towards us, his promises, and his call on our life. Math finds its origin and purpose in God. The subject of mathematics begins with God. And we can see in the Bible that in the nature of God, that God is a God who counts. What does he count? Some of the things that Scripture says he counts are, he counts the hairs on our head. What does that say about who he is, that he counts the hairs on our head? He's personal. He's powerful. He also counts the stars. It says he counts the number of the stars and he calls them by name. Again, we see his power and his personal character. The Bible also says that God counts the days. And we understand from creation that he counted the days and he established a set purpose, especially for the seventh day to be a day of rest. But God also counted some days in the book of Daniel that communicated more of a sober message. He was numbering the days of the kingdom, and he was saying, this kingdom will end. And in that, he was showing us his sovereignty and his direction and control, his providence over the events of the world and his power. So God counts. And God also told us to count. In fact, he told Abraham to count the stars. Why? He wanted him to observe nature and understand that he was Lord of all, that he was so powerful that all of those stars, who could count all the stars? There's too many. He was revealing himself to Abraham. He gives us nature so that we can understand who he is. And so through math and through counting, we understand who God is. That's one of the reasons it's so important. So God also reveals to us more of himself, the specific aspects of his nature through math. For example, we understand in Genesis 1 that God is triune when it says, let us make man in his own image. Let us make man in our own image. The words us and our are plural forms. And this plurality is also revealed in the baptism of Jesus. When we see the dove coming down upon Jesus and the word coming forth, this is my son in whom I'm well pleased, we see this triune God, one in three. And so God reveals to us his nature through counting, through math. He also reveals his eternal nature. When children study geometry and a line points in the line going both directions forever, or when they study algebra and they understand numbers going forward and backwards, negative numbers and positive numbers forever, they begin to understand this concept of eternity. And the scripture says that God is an eternal God with no beginning and no end. And so we see this eternal God, we begin to understand who he is through our study of math. Math helps us understand God. Math also reveals God's love for us. He counts the hairs on our head. We talked about that. But David said that God's thoughts towards him were numberless. And this was a prophetic revelation. Numberless, could not be counted how many thoughts God had towards him. And he understood that to be true. And we can understand that for ourselves. If God has so many thoughts towards us, we are not forgotten. He loves us. He sees us. What a wonderful thing to understand. That's from Psalm 139, verse 18. Many are your thoughts towards us. It says again, Psalm 40, verse 5. And David's trying to communicate to others how he understands his relationship with God. And that's for us to understand our relationship with God. So the idea of numberless, of counting forever and ever and never coming to an end, this we can understand through math. Math also reveals God's wonderful nature. He is wonderful, and we can count all of the things that God has done. And in fact, Scripture encourages us to tell our children all of the things that God has done. Count them, remember them, and tell them to your children. Many, O Lord my God, are the wonders which you have done. Many, it says in Psalm 40, verse 5. If I would declare and speak of them, they would be too numberless to count, David said. So math helps us understand this love of God, but math also helps us to take dominion on the earth. In Genesis, it says that we're to take dominion, meaning take care and control of our lives. And we are able to do this through math. Math helps us do things like manage our money, manage the resources and the talents that He's put within our care. Math helps us to, it's kind of funny, but Genesis says that be fruitful and multiply, and so there's this concept of even within our own families, managing our families. Math helps us to understand, hey, are we actually fulfilling God's call to multiply? Are we multiplying within our family? Are we multiplying children? Counting helps us understand if we're even fulfilling God's call within our families. So math helps us to understand and take the dominion and care and control of our lives that we should, to manage our money well, to manage our families well. But math also reveals to us God's justice. There are many scriptures that talk about the justice of God, that we're to have just weights and measures. A lot of math has to do with measuring and understanding, pounds and ounces and all these things. But why is that important? Because God requires justice. And if we don't know how to measure, then, we're going to be easily deceived, and we can easily deceive others if we're not measuring correctly and using just weights and measures. So that comes from Leviticus 19 and Proverbs 20:10. In fact, it says differing weights and differing measures, these are an abomination to the Lord. He expects justice from His people, to treat others with love and justice. So math actually helps us to understand that. So studying measurements, studying weights, very important. That's on God's heart for us to know and understand, because He is just. And so in conclusion, math enhances our relationship with God. It helps us to understand better His character, His promises, His love for us. We see that He is an infinite, sovereign, personal, just, great, wonderful, and loving God. And we also understand He has a purpose for our lives, and math helps us to understand that and to fulfill that in our day.